I fell in love with Bess, as I think my readers will. She is an extraordinary, interesting character. In a sense, she's a very good character for us to study because she goes against what we imagine to be the normal behaviour of English Tudor women. And of course, I think in that there are probably a lot of women in Tudor England whose histories we simply don't know, but who were like Bess, running businesses, marrying for benefit, and living their own lives as relatively independent and powerful women. Bess is absolutely the leader of this kind of elite group of women, I would think, in that she is extraordinarily successful in terms of her social rise through marriage and in the way that she deploys the fortune she makes on marriage. I got interested in her because there's a very fine biography of her called Bess of Hardwicke, written by the author Mary Lovell. And I read this biography and was just absolutely blown away by this extraordinary entrepreneurial character. And when I realized that she had been, as it were, the jailer to Mary Queen of Scots, just everything fell into place for me. I realized that I wanted to write a biography of Mary Queen of Scots. I couldn't see a way to do it which was interesting and which suited the way I see history. There you have this extraordinary contrast of these two women who come together, and as the history tells us, unbelievably enough, Mary probably has a love affair with Bess's husband. And at that point I went, well, that's my novel. Couldn't be easier. Every character leads me to another character. In a way, I don't go looking for them. I write something, and then either in the course of research for that book or as a result of reading around in the period, which I do, as it were, automatically between one novel and another, somebody strikes me as so interesting that I really feel driven to find out more about them, and that just leads me to another novel. It just happens to be, I think, a time of extraordinary people. And I imagine that's because it's an extraordinary time. It's a time of very great change when people have the opportunity to make amazing choices, and those choices have amazing consequences. So it's a time of very dramatic choices and consequences. My view of Mary is absolutely transformed during the course of researching for this novel, but there is what is now an old-fashioned view of Mary, which is of her as this tragic victim of circumstances, and that view of her really emphasizes her beauty, her tragic end, her execution at the hands of her cousin, and the extraordinary bad luck that she does have throughout her life. The history also tends to emphasize her marital and her sexual history. So, you look at these three husbands, all of whom are disastrous for one reason or another. And people have seen her very much as a kind of tragic figure, and a figure doomed to tragedy by her own emotional misjudgment, by her propensity, as people think, to fall in love with disastrous men. When I came to read particularly the new biography by John Guy, My Heart Is My Own, it just stood this picture of her absolutely on the head and transformed how I thought of her. What I saw from his research into the records of, say, the Privy Council meetings that she holds in Scotland is that she's really running Scotland. She holds as many Privy Council meetings as her mother did before her in Scotland, and her mother is widely regarded as a serious regent and power in the land. Mary does try extremely hard to manage Scotland, to put together the warring forces. She's very, very unlucky in that she has John Knox operating very powerfully inside her kingdom, obviously very opposed to a queen on the throne, very opposed to a Roman Catholic queen. But she's doing the best she can, and I think she would have succeeded but for the tremendous treachery of her half-brother and of the fact that the husband that she does marry, not, I think, partly out of attraction, but an awful lot to give herself a kind of alternative power base against the threat that Elizabeth poses. Darnley turns out to be such a really poisonous, dangerous, disloyal man, and his failure to support her stupidity in attacking her is what really throws her into the danger that subsequently leads to her actually losing Scotland altogether. So a lot of people contrast Mary with Elizabeth to Mary's detriment, and actually I think, the real contrast that one has to see is that Mary is very unlucky and Elizabeth is lucky, and Mary has no decent advisors, and Elizabeth is absolutely blessed with the wonderful William Cecil, who does a lot of the planning, the strategic planning of what we see as Elizabethan England. when I'm writing, I get into a sort of creative state where it is as if I'm watching this play out in front of me. So it's not exactly like real life because it certainly forms itself into scenes as I watch it. But in a way, at the very, very best moments, it just feels like I'm watching shaped real events. So I think that's why one gets this immediacy of dialogue and immediacy of action, which of course translates very well to, performance, because that's what it feels like when I see it. And also, I have a great love of language, and I work very hard to make sure that the dialogue doesn't sound modern, but also is not in any way kind of pretend Elizabethan. There's no, big ad or gadzooks going on in my dialogue. So I think that's also quite acceptable to a modern audience and, of course, nice for modern actors.